Hey there! Today I'm wearing an ascot because I thought I found it in a cupboard and I thought it would give me a refined air. Is it working? Well, never mind. It's a rainy Sunday afternoon here. I wasn't sure what to do, so I took out an old Hero 616. I've reviewed these interesting pens. The nib is a little on the scratchy side. Of course you can smooth it out, but today I decided to go a bit further. And what I did was I turned it into, well, the idea was an italic. I think it turned out as a very fat medium or a pretty anorexic broad nib, and it was a lot of fun. And I decided to document the process. I will show you these steps. These are very cheap pens, so you can fool around with them just a bit. However, I would like to point out that it's probably not a good idea to do this on any pen costing more than $5, unless you really know what you're doing. So don't go hacking away at your Montblanc 149 nibs, etc. Just try it out with a cheap pen, as I did. It was a lot of fun. It's a much more pleasant writer right now, and it's a lot wetter than it used to be. It was a bit dry, so I'm pretty happy I got myself a fairly nice pen. And that's all there's to it. So I hope this is going to be useful. Just check out the steps I've taken, what I did, and enjoy yourself. Bye! Okay, so here we have that Hero 616. I'm just going to dip it for a second and then draw you a line. So even when you dip it, it's a pretty fine line, right? Now what we're going to do today is turn this into an italic, and that's going to be a fairly simple operation. It involves damaging the pen, so don't do it if you don't want to harm your pen. What I got here is just a pair of cutting pliers. I'm going to check with my loupe where exactly the tipping starts, if there is such a thing. You can see that it's that little ball. I'm just going to clip off a bit of the nib at that part. There we go. I check out the result. That's a little difficult to show you, but the nib is now cut off. Okay, that looks good to me. So I'm sure you cannot really see, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that those tipping balls are now gone. So if you were to look at the nib through a high-powered magnification, I'm sure this is not really going to work, but then you would see the nib is now flat. So I take the first sheet of micro mesh. This is 1500 grit. I put some water on, that just extends the life of the micro mesh, and I just start working on it. Now I'm going to do that, I'm going to hold the pen under the angle on which I usually write. You hear it's a coarse grit, and even, sandpaper wise, this is quite fine already. I'm just making some figures 8 and infinity signs to try and hit every part of the nib, sort of diagonally too. Turn the nib around, give it a few slides. Going to check it out. What I want to see at some point, and that's already happening because this is pretty soft metal, excellent, is when I look at the side of the nib, I don't want it to be straight, I want it to be slanted at an angle like this. So not straight, but like this, because that way when it's on the paper it will actually be, really making contact with the paper the way I like it to be. I'll go on for a while. Don't exert too much pressure, that's really not necessary, that will only damage the micro mesh. It's the micro mesh that's doing the work, not your force. You don't have to grind the nib in there. Of course you can use other things like a buffing wheel, but I don't have one. Now I'm just working on the corners of the nib, I don't want them to be too sharp. Okay, there we go. I just wipe this clean because I'm done. So this was 1500 grit. I now move to something that's about halfway through. This is 3600 grit. I put some water on there. Basically repeat the process. Before I do that, I check it out with my loupe again. Yes, it's definitely a nice angle now. So this is really a matter of smoothing it a bit out. You hear this is a different grit, right? It's a much softer sound. There's not a lot of resistance, so this is working out. Check it out again. I'm sorry I can't really show you this, but what I'm seeing is that the metal is just getting smoother in the angle I want it to be. And I dry off that. Now I take the finest grit. This is the pad I use the most. You can see that this is what I use for regular nib smoothing, so not when I'm actually turning a nib into an metallic or something, but just smoothing it. Is smoothing actually a word? We should probably just say smoothing, right? There is almost no resistance here, which is very good. It means I've succeeded in grinding the nib and polishing it a bit. That's the bottom, the top side of the nib. Is there any part? Sorry for the annoying noises. Is there any part I actually get snagged? Doesn't seem to be the case. It's very smooth. For regular nib smoothing, you wouldn't do this as extensively as I've been doing here, but this nib had to be smoothed quite a bit because I cut off quite a bit. Usually you wouldn't cut off stuff from nibs, right? There we go. Okay, clean off that bit. Then it's time to ink up the pen, which with these pens is always a bit of an issue. I'll just dry off the nib. Lindauer Blau. Alright. These aerometric converters suck. It's very difficult to get ink in there, so I just squeeze the sac directly. Something like that. You will never get this full. You can forget about that. Okay. Now I take my... Whoops. I just pressed the sac and now there's ink all over my fingers. So there is some ink in there. Oh, well, well. There we go. That's quite a bit of ink. Never had these this full. Okay, now the big moment, putting this to the test. Something you can do, by the way, is just take a bottle of shellac and an applicator and just fill up this hole, and you can use it as an eyedropper. You just pull the sac out, but that's another operation. So this is what it did at first. This is what it does now. Nice and smooth, a bit of line variation. But most importantly for me, it's smoother than it used to be, and it's broader, because that extremely fine line kind of annoyed me. And now you've got a nice nib that I could definitely live with, and that writes well. There you go. So, a couple of minutes and you've got a whole different pen. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.